The Morrigan is a goddess who is familiar to many people today, known by pagans as an Irish deity, as well as by non-pagans through pop culture and video games. She is a figure who inspires fear and awe, as well as love and devotion in those who hear her name. For a while in modern paganism, particularly in America, the Morrigan was regarded with a distinct air of concern and excessive caution, viewed as a dark and possibly dangerous deity because of her connections to death and war. Indeed, there was a time a few decades ago when many pagans were adverse to even speaking her name and were quick to advise others not to invoke or work with her. Thankfully, that attitude seems to be shifting, and more people are appreciating the Morrigan for the powerful and important goddess that she is. Although misinformation is still as easy to find about her as genuine mythology and folklore. For those who seek her today, it is important to try find a balanced view that is both honest about her mythology and folklore, which can be blood-soaked and grim sometimes, but also isn't excessively focused only on her more dangerous attributes and gives equal focus to her more positive qualities. Morrigan is both a name and a title, and this is often the first point of confusion for people seeking to understand her. Morrigan may mean either Phantom Queen or Great Queen, depending on how it is spelled in Irish. Phantom Queen has connotations relating to a queen of the dead, while Great Queen is more straightforward. In any case, it is usually preceded by the indefinite article, the, giving us the Morrigan. We see her discussed as an individual being in the mythology, but we also see the name used as a title for other named deities, particularly her sisters, Baib and Machla. Some modern authors consider Baib and Machla as aspects or parts of the Morrigan as a whole, but in the older mythology, the three deities were clearly individual beings with their own stories and personalities. This confusion is understandable, however, because of the use of the Morrigan's name as a title and her existence as an individual in her own right. We do know, though, that the Morrigan as an individual has her own mythology and personality, just as her sisters do, and when the three appear together in mythology, they always appear as a trio or a group, and never to my knowledge are they described in a way that would lead to interpreting them in an amorphous or inclusive way, until modern times. When we look at the mythology, we find that the Morrigan as an individual is present in many stories, often as a key player. Sometimes she appears by herself, acting alone, as we see in the Tambola Gavna, when she breeds a fairy cow to a particular bull, which will eventually set in motion the more well-known Tanbon Kulna, while other times she appears with her sisters in coordinated efforts, such as we see in the Kaf Mai Tura, where the Morrigan, Baib, and Machla act together to cast battle magic on the enemies of the Tuatha De Danann. Mythology is also an excellent resource to learn more about her family connections, including her husband and children, although it has to be kept in mind that with all Irish mythology, the written sources can sometimes be contradictory. Another misconception is that the Morrigan is a pan-Celtic goddess. I suspect this is rooted in the fact that Baib is understood as one of the Morrigan, because she is given the title, and Baib is possibly a pan-Celtic goddess with a Gaulish counterpart in Catul Boldua. The Morrigan as an individual, however, has no queer equivalents elsewhere, although several have been suggested, usually based on etymology. This is a difficult argument to support, because while we may have goddesses in other Celtic language cultures whose name mean Great Queen, their mythology and personality is generally extremely different from the Irish Morrigans. In the end, some may choose to see echoes of the Morrigan in the reconstructed continental Riatona or in the Welsh Rhiannon, but if they ever did share a common root, it must have diverged in the distant past and developed in entirely unique directions. The strongest associations that the Morrigan has are to war and battle, things that make people feel uncomfortable today, but which should be understood in the cultural context of the mythology. War, although described in epic terms in the stories, usually hinged on the cattle raid, which was not focused on bloodshed, but on the shifting of economic wealth in the form of cows. from one group to another. Cattle raiding was a key concept and essential in a culture for whom cows and dairy products were pivotal. In the same way, battle, or at least the ideal of battle, was focused on honourable combat, what the Irish called fear, literally men's truth. We see the idea of honourable combat coming into play in many of the tales, particularly the famous Toinbo Coinle, where Cuchulainn uses this idea to hold the ford against Maib's army by challenging them to single combat between champions. The army is honour-bound not to pass him until he has been defeated in such combat. While we must also understand the inherent pain and blood and suffering of battle, something we are told in the stories the Morrigan did glory in. To understand the Morrigan as a war and battle goddess, we have to try to grasp what war and battle have meant over time and throughout the different cultural iterations she has existed in. When we talk about the Morrigan as a deity of war and battle, while those concepts do intrinsically include the bloody death and suffering we understand them for, they also have deeper cultural layers that must be appreciated in order to truly understand what it means for her to be such a deity. Another key role the Morrigan takes on that is related to her role as a goddess of battle is her connection to incitement. This is often overlooked, but is a vital aspect of her personality and also of her power. The Morrigan is a deity who makes important things happen, particularly forcing necessary change into stagnant or unhealthy systems, and she does this by inciting kings and warriors to rise up and forcibly cause that change. She creates conflict, but never without a purpose, and often with many overlapping purposes intertwined. She appears to the warriors of the Tuatha Dé Danann in a battle they are losing in the Caf Moitula, and chants an incitement that causes them to turn the tide of the fight and overcome their enemies. She appears to Lu in the Caf Moitula and chants an incitement that causes him to rise up and fight to overthrow the false King Brez and the Fomorians who are oppressing the Tuatha Dé Danann. One can even argue that in the Tanbo Lagadna, she appears and incites Cuchulainn to get him to pledge himself to fight in the later Tanbo Coinle. In each case, she is the motivating force encouraging others to act to their own benefit and ultimately to the benefit of a greater good. The Morrigan is also a goddess of prophecy who speaks what has already come to pass and what is yet to happen. We see this the most clearly in her famous paired prophecies in the Caf Moitula, where she predicts a time of blessing and abundance, and then also a time of social upheaval and disorder. Her prophetic skill is also seen elsewhere as well, and can be understood in the way that she takes certain actions in order to nurture a long-term consequence. As was previously mentioned, she sets the Toinbo Coinle in motion years prior to the actual cattle raid by breeding a cow to a specific bull, the magical Down of Coinle. In that same story, she predicts to Cuchulainn that the great cattle raid of Cooley will occur. The birth and then death of the calf conceived by that cow at the horns of the white bull, Finn Benach, is an important piece of what sets the larger cattle raid into motion. Ultimately, the story of the cattle raid ends when the two great bulls, who are actually men of the Sidhe, cursed into a series of animal forms, meet and fight to the death. She also has some connections to predicting death, something we see for example in the Ulster cycle. More generally when she appears in one story to Medrup to relate the death of one of her sons, also not incidentally inciting Medrup to rise up and avenge that death. And in the story of the death of Cuchulainn, she appears to try to stop Cuchulainn from going out to meet his fate. In later folklore, she is related to the otherworldly Banshee through her associations with both death and prophecy. One of the Morrigan's purviews which is emphasized more today, and perhaps rightly so, is her skill with magic. A common thread in many of her myths is her ability to use different types of magic, and she is referred to variously in the mythology by terms translated variously as witch, druidess, and sorceress. In one story, she and her sisters rain fire and blood down on the heads of the enemies of the Tuatha Dé Danann, while in another, she uses her power to transform a woman who foolishly pursues her to her she into a pool of water. In the Kaf Moitula, she uses her magic to take the strength of one of the Fomorian kings opposing her, symbolically represented by 2 handfuls of blood, and promises his death. She is also famous for her ability to change her shape, referred to in one story as the shape-shifting goddess, and taking a variety of forms both animal and human. She can be seen as a crow, wolf, eel, cow, and a raven or blackbird, as well as a woman both young and beautiful, or old and haggard. Her true form is uncertain, although the likeliest candidate may be her appearance as a red-haired woman in the Tambola Gavna. Beyond the various purviews of the Morrigan that we have discussed here, there are several more modern understandings of her that have developed recently as well, such as the idea that she is a mother goddess, a goddess of sex, and a deity of rebirth. These can often be traced back to an individual writer or person within the pagan community, but sometimes just seem to appear as new beliefs with no clear root. These ideas are generally things that reflect aspects of modern pagan theology in some way, or modern culture more generally, but cannot be supported or found in the older mythology. With these newer beliefs, some of which can even contradict older ones that are found in myth or folklore, it will come down to individual judgment on how much weight a person gives them, or how much they are or are not incorporated into a person's spirituality. A fierce and active goddess, the Morrigan has been a powerful force in the mythology as a goddess, and later in the folklore as an otherworldly woman. She is a complex goddess, and the more you learn about her, the more you will realize there is left to be learned. The older mythology and folklore is a treasure trove of material relating to the Morrigan, full of her actions both beneficial and mercurial. It is thanks to the older material that we know she was considered a goddess historically, and that people did pray to her, perhaps unsurprisingly for success in cattle raids. We see her appearing to antagonize Cuchulainn, but also to aid him, displaying a depth to their relationship that defies easy categorization. She is a goddess who is both blunt and direct and nuanced and mysterious. She defies easy categorization as a straightforward death and battle goddess. Yet, those are clearly things she had power over, breaking the classical mold that has many people looking for a god of war. She gives us a powerful goddess of war. While other Irish goddesses became saints, the Morrigan and her sisters didn't, retaining their otherworldly powers and defying taming into anything less eldritch. Keep seeking for her, because there is always more to find. If you would like to continue your journey with the Morrigan, then I suggest you start with our books, The Morrigan and Raven Goddess, both by Morgan Daimler, who also provided the words for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe for weekly content, and we'll see you next time.